With great pleasure that once again I can welcome President Zelensky here to Paris. 2 weeks since his last visit, and this is a decisive time for the future of Ukraine and security in Europe. It is now 34 years, day for day, since the independence referendum in Ukraine, where the entire population voted to be free, voted to be independent, even in those territories which are today contested. I would like to say here to President Zelensky and to the entire Ukrainian people that you have all of our support in light of recent strikes hitting the country, hitting Kiev, that you have our deepest condolences and support. And in light of the recent attack in Dnipro, the cost has been very high, and it is a sign from Russia that they are continuing their attack and their aggression. And it is a violation of international law. At a time where we are speaking of peace, Russia is continuing to destroy and to attack. This is an insult to law and to peace itself. We would like to say that we will continue to support Ukraine, especially in light of recent events, and this is why it is so important for President Zelensky and I to meet once again today, in light of conversations that we've had in Geneva, discussions that we have had over the previous weeks and days in Miami, and with the recent meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, to which, for the first time, we had Marco Rubio in attendance. The current situation is one where the United States are playing the role of mediator, and I would like to welcome efforts put in by the American administration. And America, like Ukraine, like all Europeans, we are striving for peace. That was the cornerstone of negotiations and discussions that have been taking place these past few days, hours, weeks. But again, as we are speaking of peace, we all have a role to play. It is up to Russia to stop attacks, and they are showing no sign that they are doing so. Ukraine alone can speak for territories because it is their territory. As recognized by international law, they are sovereign over that land. When talking about peace guarantees, they are to be discussed with Ukrainians around the table and with Europeans and all members of the Coalition of the Willing attending, because they are the guarantors for that peace. But it is also a matter of European security. When talking about frozen Russia's assets, those affected countries, European nations, they are to be around the table because they are the only ones with competency over such matters. Therefore, it is up to all of us to ensure that everyone's competencies are abided by. We're going to finalize work on peace guarantees, which I just mentioned, which are so important for the peace and stability in the region. In the coming days, we're going to continue having essential discussions with American representatives and members of the Coalition of the Willing to shore up American participation in the Coalition of the Willing. We are also engaging in conversations for Russia to provide as much clarity as possible to the American mediators as we strive for peace. And I am sure that all of us stand united for Ukraine to uphold international law to ensure peace and security for Europe. I would like to say once again here today that given the context, I would like to thank support from the United Kingdom and Germany that our goal is to build sustainable peace, long-term peace for Ukraine and again for all Europeans. To that effect, after the conversations that we have just had with President Zelensky, and in light of conversations that we have had back in Miami with negotiators and with all European partners, as we lay out the groundwork for the coming days and weeks, we will make sure that everyone is kept fully abreast of developments as they arise. This is an important moment for France to say that we are here to support Ukraine and ensure that their identity will not be erased. With the First Lady of Ukraine here in attendance, I would like to welcome her as well, who will be attending events this evening with my wife. We are going to be opening up the week for the season for Franco-Ukrainian culture and exchange. The First Ladies attending an event at the Quai d'Orsay Museum to sign off efforts that our nations have been working on, and to provide support also for those people who have been deeply affected by this war. We will provide our utmost mobilization to right the wrongs. Today is an opportunity for both of our countries to coordinate our efforts, to coordinate our points of view again with negotiators, and to reiterate how important it is for all to take action for long-term peace. As I said, in the coming days, there will be ongoing discussions between the American delegation and the Russian delegation. This will enable us to have the greatest clarity as to whether Russia wishes to continue or not. We will continue to support all peace efforts. We will continue to support Ukraine's resistance efforts to push back against Russia, because it is a matter of our own consistency and our own security. Allow me just to say once again, Mr. President, that you have all our support. Thank you, President Macron. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for the friendship that we have. I would like to thank France for its support to Ukraine. I would like to thank you for all that you have done in our cooperation and all the support that you have shown. I would like to thank also the journalists for being here today and for the deep interest that you have shown in Ukraine and for the support that you have shown us as well. Unfortunately, the war is still ongoing and we still require your support. We have had a lot of support since the beginning from President Macron, and I have kept him informed of all of that we have done within our delegation. And I would like to thank all of his very interesting and useful advice that he has given me during these times. The support from the European Union, from the United Kingdom, from Denmark, Netherlands, from the European Commission, the Council of Europe, from the Secretary General of NATO, and many others. I would like to thank all of you for your support. It is so vital today. I would like to thank also President Trump for his help and assistance. Working with Emmanuel Macron and our delegations, we have been able to stay in contact with Rustem Umrakov from Ukraine and Steve Witkoff. Keir Starmer was also in touch with us. We have many other dates and meetings in place because these days are days where we can see a great amount of change coming through. Just yesterday or just recently we were negotiating in the United States. We will soon be also hearing from the United States and Russia and their meeting. We want this war to come to an end and it to end in a dignified manner. And if all can act honestly to uphold the peace guarantees, then we will be able to ensure a safe Ukraine, safe Europe. But also, this is important for the United States of America, for their long-term interests in having a democratic world. Sometimes we may feel that we are all alone, that there is the United States and that there is Europe, but we all need security, that we all need stable economic development. It is in our shared interest to live in a world without war. Russia needs to put an end to the war, a war that they started. This is Russia that started the war, and Russia is the only country that can stop this war. We have been receiving great help in trying to bring an end to the war with peace guarantees, guarantees to ensure Ukraine's ongoing independence, Ukraine's sovereignty. We have been working greatly to avoid another invasion from Russia, or for the invasion of Russia to extend further. Russia has broken down all previous attempts at negotiations, at peacekeeping. They've broken promises, and that is why Ukraine, all of us, we need strong peace guarantees, strong security guarantees. This is what we've seen over the past 4 years, since the beginning of the attacks. With missiles, with drones, they are now more present and more pervasive than ever before. Every day in Ukraine, as you know, we are seeing Russian attacks. Russia is continuing to attack violently, as we have seen recently in Dnipro, with many lives that were lost, and my thoughts go out to those families. We need to rid our region of the threat of further airstrikes, of further attacks. I would like to actually thank France and all allies within the coalition for the support. Within the coalition, they are preparing for very true, very real security in the region with guarantees. Guarantees that Russia will not feel like they are being rewarded in some way or another for their attack, for this war. There needs to be a guarantee that no countries would be tempted to follow the same path, also seeking some form of reward. Because we have to uphold the laws of our lands, lands that are currently being occupied by Russian forces. Russia, the aggressor, they need to pay for their attack, and it needs to be a unified response from all of us, something that will continue to uphold the promise of peace. This is important just for Ukraine, but also for all of Europe, a common voice from Europe. It's not just a matter of when the war will end, but also for how long after this will we be able to say that war is no longer a threat? How will we be able to ensure long-term peace after the end of the war? All partners need to truly understand all the risks that are at play. Currently, what we see, well, back in December, as Mr. Emmanuel Macron just said, is that we are now in the season of Ukrainian culture in France. This is a sign that our culture is important, that supporting it is important. Both nations' first ladies are currently working together on a number of events. We have 12 French universities who joined an initiative to hold classes in Ukrainian. And I would like to thank all of the partners with whom we've been working to ensure further education programs, for cultural programs, because through culture we can see that it does influence politics. And with our partnership with France, I am convinced that this is a partnership that is going to continue on, as I said, well beyond the end of the war, whenever that comes. And we can do this thanks to the support of our partners of France. But on top of that, this is a sign that we have strong bilateral relations. And I would like to thank Mr. Macron for the recent approval of funding. We've been receiving funding for the war efforts. We've been receiving material for the war efforts, equipment. We are receiving help for air defense, for land defense, and also in our agenda we spoke about a number of other items: economic relations, economic ties. We spoke of the matter of having Ukrainian driving permits and licenses approved in France for certain equivalencies, and thanks to all of that work, we can see strong support for Ukrainian people in France. A question. Recent reports from AFP show that Russia is making more advances now than over recent years. So, does this raise up the urgency for a common response? And another question, following discussions in Florida and conversations that you've had today with negotiators, are we looking to a third version of the plan which will come out tomorrow? Is it finally acceptable for Ukraine? And what items have been carried over from previous agreements, especially in terms of land and territory? Thank you for your question. As for progress, well, you have freely accessible information. And I would look more towards Ukrainian sources for information on current affairs. Yes, Russia is progressing. There have been attacks from Russia, but none of the military operations have been truly successful. There has been a very dangerous and very violent fights in certain regions, and some of our efforts have been quite successful in pushing them back. While Russia says that the Russian army has invaded cities, we still have Kupiansk in our possession, under our control. So you need to remain objectively minded. There are many Russian soldiers on the ground. Last month, they had the largest number of losses, the largest months in terms of losses of the past few months. We have video confirmation of some 25,000 Russian soldiers dead. So there is no major secret about the fact that there have been certain advances made, but this is a time of war, and this is a frontier, it is a border, and that border between our forces is constantly moving and changing. Russian soldiers will make certain breakthroughs at certain points, but it is not the overall line that is being pushed forward. They may gain some 10 to 15 meters of ground, sometimes a bit more, but we gain that ground back. That said, our main focus is on preserving human lives. We're focusing on people. We have been working tirelessly to recruit more soldiers. Now, to answer your question, how is that going to have an impact, or will it impact the war as it comes? We are losing soldiers every day, so too are Russians. Every day, we mourn those people who died. So we're not here to talk about meters or kilometers. What we're talking about is the fact that the Russians are not going to stop. So you spoke of territory. For me, the question is first and foremost a question of human lives. We need peace guarantees. We need to realize that once this war is over, we need peace guarantees so that a new invasion, another invasion, will never again occur in our region. Talking of political and military pressure on Ukraine, we're seeing that pressure coming in different ways. We're having pressure from the field, from on the ground, but yes, we are also having political pressure, and that is putting psychological, physical pressure on the Ukrainian people. It is slowly wearing away at the Ukrainian people. And it is hard to have a policy in place to protect that. But what we can do is we are going to uphold all of our commitments and all of our promises to do our utmost. Well, I cannot speak for the American delegation about to send to Russia, but they have been given a mandate to try and have some form of clarification as to Russia's position. Now, the plan can only be finalized with President Zelensky's input. Now, in terms of frozen assets, European sanctions, peace guarantees, that can only be finalized with Europeans sitting around the table. So we are still in the early stages of that plan. But I would like to welcome America's efforts for peace, for which we'll have greater clarity after tomorrow.
The Public Broadcaster of Ukraine. Тож, пане президенте, щодо переговорів, які відбулися вчора, перше запитання до вас.
A question in light of negotiations from yesterday.
Ви вже сказали про тиск. Чи був певний тиск щодо цих поступок?
Did you talk about territory? Was there certain pressure?
І, можливо,
Was there mention of the demarcation line?
США можуть надати гарантії безпеки для України в разі припинення
Did they speak of peace guarantees from the United States if a ceasefire were to be agreed to?
In that package, could there be any restrictions against Russian oil companies like Rosneft and Lukoil, which the US has imposed sanctions against before? Thanks. Merci.
No, please. Дякую за ваше запитання. Передусім, зустрічі були і вчора, і сьогодні.
Thank you for the question. So we spoke and met with them yesterday, today as well. We are going to have a few more sessions, maybe 30 minutes or more, to finalize our positions. We have been in contact with also other partners, President Macron. We have spoken with them over the phone. This is a process which is not yet finalized. So the question of territory and land is probably the most difficult. To be honest, this is something that we have spoken about in the past. Without the presence of European partners, it is quite difficult to make any headway, especially for the reconstruction efforts and rebuilding efforts, because that money is going to come from predominantly European partners. As for security guarantees, we need concrete security guarantees from the United States and from Europe. I believe that they are the key topics that we need to focus on. Yet, at the same time, these issues aren't easy to pull apart. So I would like to thank our negotiating partners. The plan that we currently have is better. As for the various issues that you're talking about, territory, well, the conversations and negotiations that we had about territories, they lasted some 6.5 hours. So yes, negotiations, discussions are still ongoing. The Americans gave us their view. They also gave their view on Russia. We are awaiting feedback from our own delegations. We will head out to Ireland, where they will have further negotiations and we'll have feedback from them then. And from what I understand, Russia will be hearing from America and will be hearing the American view. America will be able to hear the Russian view. After all of these conversations have been held, we will then be able to take stock of the situation and then have further conversations with our European partners, again, on the items that I just mentioned. And we'll be able to have another conversation with the American president on key items. Those key items which are, again, very hard to understand and pull apart.
I was with my translator and you spoke in English. So we decided 19th package of sanctions, and we are preparing the 20th. And in parallel, the Americans decided to include in the sanctions, which is brand new, the two main oil and gas companies. So I think the level of pressure on the oil and gas companies and oil and gas industry in Russia will be, in the weeks to come, at the highest since the beginning of the war. And I think this is a game changer. And the level of pressure on the Russian economy will clearly increase. On top of that, you should not underestimate what we increased in parallel during the past few weeks, which is our fight against the shadow fleet. And we know that 40% of the war effort in Russia is financed through this shadow fleet. So this is the first time we have such a level of, I would say, an holistic approach on Russian oil and gas. First, because we had a US decision on sanctions, and second, because we increased our pressure on the shadow fleet. So I really believe that in the weeks to come, the pressure on the Russian economy and the capacity of Russia to finance the war efforts will drastically change.
Monsieur le Président Zelensky, Monsieur le Président Macron, bonjour. Mathieu Desmoulins pour TF1.
President Zelensky and Macron. A corruption case has shaken Ukraine, with Andriy Yermak somewhat involved. According to President Trump, corruption is rife in Ukraine. President Zelensky, do you not feel that this is going to tarnish conversations that you're currently having, especially given the difficult negotiations that are now having? We have also heard from Belgium in terms of Russian assets being frozen. How do you feel that we'll be able to make further headway in light of the upcoming European Council, and how can you ensure that funds will not be used to support Russian efforts? Ever since the beginning, I have said that we will need to find a solution which provides a response to all of the legitimate issues that are being raised. And I certainly hope that Prime Minister will also find technical, specific ways of moving forward. And we will need to have this finalized before Christmas, before the next European Council. And a number of decisions are to be announced in the coming weeks. We need to make sure that the assets will remain within our control, and we need to make sure that we uphold all international rules. We need to find adequate solutions so that we can provide Ukraine with clear visibility and help them in long-term war efforts, that we continue to support their armed forces in the long term. So we are continuing to work in full respect. As for the matter of corruption, I will let President Zelensky respond to that. But we are very mindful. Those bodies that are in charge were created and have been bolstered and are doing their work freely. Decisions that were made were done so by Ukrainian political leaders. Now, is it up to us to give lessons to Ukraine? Well, as a democratic nation, it is up to them to solve those issues, and it needs to apply to all decision makers, all politicians. Now, what is surprising is that you never hear of corruption in Russia because there's no body, independent body, to look into it. So when we are supporting war efforts, it is important that we are very demanding and that we ensure that people are held accountable. But the fight against corruption works because there are investigations and decisions made. But what is deeply concerning is that you never hear of corruption in Russia because, again, of the way the system has been put in place and created.
Дякую за ваше запитання. Питання було у вас, як відповідні речі впливають на Україну. Всі впливають.
The question you asked is how will these sorts of things affect Ukraine? Well, everything has an impact on our negotiations. It has an impact on people. There are a number of things taking place. For me, as president of a nation which is at war, I have to make numerous decisions every single day. Some of those decisions are very tough, and I will continue to make those decisions to bolster our nation, to make our nation stronger.
Доброго дня, Лідія Таран, Укрінформ. Сподіване і водночас несподіване питання до вас. Відповідь на нього чекають дуже багато людей, звісно.
There are a number of people who have asked questions and we are waiting for answers.
Це коротке коло, а можливо ви вже знаєте ім'я.
We are waiting for a list of people who and when will you designate a cabinet? Do you know who that person is going to be? And maybe if you already do, could you give us names? Is the Dublin plan, European plan, in terms of security guarantees, is it going to be incorporated in conversations that will be presented to the Kremlin tomorrow?
Дякую за запитання. Я не впевнений, що це запитання дуже цікаво французькій аудиторії.
Now, thank you for the question, but I don't know whether it is necessarily a question which is relevant for the French people.
Ну, сенсації сьогодні точно не буде, а озвучувати я не буду, тому що я хочу ще додаткові
провести консультації, я планував
по поверненню в Україну.
I don't want to make a big show about this by giving out names today, but I will do so. And when I make an announcement, it will be a decision made according to a number of criteria. It will be a cabinet built upon either politics, diplomacy, incorporating a few other important figures. We have had a number of candidates, very serious candidates in Ukraine, and you will see the results. Can you give us a few names? Wait, I don't want to disclose any names today.
Je ne peux pas vous répondre sur ce point.
Well, I can't answer that question.
Non, sur la deuxième question que vous posiez.
But as to the second question that you asked,
Je pense qu'il faut voir les choses telles qu'elles sont.
I think we need to look at things as they are. The Americans are trying to mediate, which is very good, and they're now putting pressure on Russia. Do you want peace? This is a new form of an initiative, and I would like to thank President Trump and his teams. They first called for a ceasefire. March of this year, President Zelensky said, yes, I agree with the ceasefire. They went over, Russia said no. Then another proposal came through in June. We worked on it here in London. Russia said no. Then there was Anchorage, an American proposal for mediation. Russia said no. America is coming forward with yet another proposal to mediate. We now need to wait for Russia's response. Are they willing to put an end to fighting or not? So we need to thank America for that effort. Now just bear in mind, it's been 3 or 4 times that Russia has said no. So we have a president who has said yes, and we have been there to support. Now, this is not necessarily a fully fledged peace plan, because that takes a lot of work. There is the first and foremost the issue of land and territory. And this is responsibility for the Ukrainian president and no one else. And this is important for Americans to understand, and is understood by Americans, by the president, by Mr. Rubio. They understood this. As for Europeans and our involvement, I think we need to understand that the American mediation is for America and Russia. They have consulted with Ukraine, first and foremost, but also with us. But this is not a fully fledged peace plan, because for that, you need to have Ukrainians at the negotiation table. You need to have Europeans at the negotiation table, but that's not where we are yet. We prepared for this back in February. We were preparing for peace guarantees, which are important for 2 main reasons. First, to make sure we have long-term peace for Ukraine. And second, that there is not a new attack. And for us as Europeans, to be able to contain Russian power and Russian presence and to stop it from progressing further to European borders. So we are ready to negotiate, just as we will negotiate about frozen Russian assets in the coming days. So there are a number of items which together form the peace plan, and Ukraine is vitally important in that plan, as is Europe. But we need to welcome how important it is that we have America pushing for mediation, and that they will be able to bring back, hopefully, a clear indication of Russia willing to put a stop to fighting and for peace. But in the meantime, I would just like to reiterate that we will continue to support the Ukrainian people and Ukrainian leaders, because each day we talk of peace and we want this message to be heard by Russia, but we still hear bombs landing on Ukrainian soil, plunging the country into cold and darkness. As has been said, we have seen where history has taken us in the past, and we are going to continue to help Ukraine resist and ensure long-term peace. That brings the press conference to an end. Thank you very much.
Emmanuel. Merci.